How's everybody?
Hello, you beautiful people.
All right. Before I begin my talk, I'm going to preface it with a vignette from my upcoming work, All I Ever Wanted Was a Piece of Life, for my son, Shalom, peace, and my daughter, Messiah, life. The vignette is entitled, Dushan. This is for the boy in the back right corner of the class whose mama just passed and baby daddy is still not ready to daddy's baby, so granny has got to keep him out the system. Listen, this is for that boy in the right back corner of my class whose mom just passed. Police just found her stash behind the trash and dad is still not ready to be a daddy to his baby, so granny has got to keep him out of the system. I'm listening. Dushan. I write that vignette along with thousands of other poems for these students that I meet on a regular basis, on a daily basis sometimes. I'm here to tell you about a movement that started in my classroom in 2006. And I was teacher 16 in one school year. And I asked myself the question, what do I have to offer a group of 26 students, 25 black, 1 Caucasian, 11 males, and 15 females, who have already seen 15 adults walk out and say, you're not worth me being here. I, like Audre Lorde, take a clear, long, harsh look at my living and my reality with urgent clarity. Urgent clarity. And we start, hello, beautiful. Now, it's simple just to say that those 2 words changed the classroom magically, and all of a sudden they are learning at the level that they're supposed to learn, and they're no longer 3 or 4 tier levels behind in reading, and they're writing on a scholarly level. But that's not what happened immediately. That's what happened in the end game. And that's what we wanted to focus on, was the end game. My job as the educator was to make sure that they understood and knew that I was there to stay. That I was there to stay. And like any business owner and or leader who has taken over a fledgling business, or who has to go back and reboot a team of people who have lost their enthusiasm, what do you do? What do you do to build the culture? What do you do to get people back on your team? And that's how I looked at these students. We needed to rebuild the culture. They needed to understand themselves. They needed to know that it was somebody there to support them. And that's essentially what happened in the Hello Beautiful movement, and that's how it got started. I walked in on 26 students who had lost so many things in their lives, including 15 teachers, and I asked 3 questions. 3 questions. Tell me everything that you have heard about yourself. Write down, good or bad, everything that you have heard about yourself. Draw a line once you've completed that, and underneath there, you tell me everything that you want to hear about yourself. Turn your paper over after you do that, and you write down your dreams and goals, and then you tell me how I can help you. Mind you that I'm a school teacher, right? That my job is to teach them English, right? But in order for me to teach them English, I had to have them understand that I was there, that I wasn't leaving, and that I wanted to know who they were and how I can get them to the next level. Right now, we call that interest-based learning, right? So in education, that is similar to where we started, with interest-based learning. So I now know their interest, and I hear all of these words that sabotage their beginnings. They tell me how ugly they are, or how stupid they are, how dumb they are. And then I go back and change the language. And I say to them, right, you're not stupid, you're not ugly, And who taught you that? And then this becomes my essential question. If beauty is in the eye of the beholder, who trained the eye? Who taught you to think that way about yourself? And how can I help you change the way you think? How do I help you change the way you think? Now, all of this has to happen before we actually get to some type of learning, right? And for any business person out there who is trying to turn around a business, you have to build the culture first. I think that's very important. And it might take more time in the beginning, but in the end, your end game will be what it is that you've dreamt about. And so that's what happened for me. What happened initially is that I came in on the middle of the school year. I didn't have as much time as every other teacher. So I came in on the middle of the school year, and essentially I only had 3 months. I had 3 months to get our students up to speed in order for them to move over to the next level, right? And I knew that I had a very short time. We had a lot of work to do, but I spent the 3 weeks, 4 weeks necessary to build the culture. It was necessary to build the culture. Me understanding the language, me knowing exactly who they were, knowing my audience, knowing who the students were, changing the language, exploiting their strengths, helped us get to our end game. And that's what I'm prepared to show you now. I'm prepared to show you that you have to first know your audience, whether you're in the classroom or not. I'm specifically talking about the classroom because for me, that's where I am most beneficial, the classroom or the stage, right? And so, for me, I had to learn my students and know who they were inside and out. I had to know exactly where their strengths lie because I needed to exploit those strengths to bring up their morale. When I brought up their morale, it changed the game of how they presented themselves and their work. It changed how they wanted to learn. Part of me building that morale and understanding that was first understanding their language. So many times we get confused when it comes to demographics. Right? It's not necessarily that you and I are different in color and or shade, but maybe in language. And so if we understood the language of the culture that we are in front of or the culture that we have to teach, it helps us understand what it is that we have to teach in ways that they get it. Not that these kids could not get it, right? But the teachers before me didn't understand the language. And I chose to deep dive into the language. So it's not that I asked 25 kids, can you give me a synonym for great? Silence. But if I say, give me another word for great, every hand goes up. So I need to teach them what synonym means. Antonym, right? So we can talk on the same language. We can speak the same. And so that's one of the things that I did in order to make this develop and blossom and bloom into what it is that we needed to do, right? So my job was to first know my audience, know my students, know exactly what it is that they wanted to go. Step number one. I did that by asking them to tell me who they were. They created their narratives. They told me exactly who they were and where they wanted to go. Number two, I had to understand their strengths and their weaknesses. Right? I exploited their strengths. Every time someone did something that was great, whether it was minute or extremely large, I told everybody in the classroom to acknowledge that. Give me 3 claps for Dushawn Thompson for doing great. 1, 2, 3. That's how it works. And as soon as the class hears that somebody else is doing good, everybody else wants to be acknowledged too. Just like in the business, when you do well, you want to be acknowledged. Students are the same way. When they do well, they want to be acknowledged. So we did that. We exploited the strengths. We worked on their weaknesses, small groups with working on their weaknesses. But we exploited their strengths. We shouted them from the mountaintop. We changed the language. We not only changed the language that they were using to self-sabotage themselves, but we changed the language that was going on in the classroom. And so we understood exactly what our end game was going to be. We understood where we had to go in language that was educationally put. We didn't want to hear street language in the classroom. We wanted to hear grammatically correct words used correctly, all right? And so we changed the language. We changed the language of what they said about themselves, and we changed the language of what it is that they heard about themselves. Everybody in the classroom could only uplift and encourage in our classroom. You could not demean each other. Everybody was in the same place doing the same thing, learning. Finally, we had our end game. Our end game was to improve. our end game, we wanted to make sure that we improved not only in our test scores, but we wanted to improve ourselves, our reading. So in those 3 months, the data showed that in 3 months, we improved the reading levels by 4 tier levels in 1 school year. Thank you. We improved their writing 180% on the NWEA testing in 3 months. Those 4 simple things: knowing your audience, exploiting their strengths, changing the language, and having an end game. And there you have, hello, beautiful. I'm asking you to retrain your eye. Not only the things that you see with, but you individually, so you can help me as an educator and help each other understand the things that you are afraid of. Take a deeper look and understand the people that are around you by simply saying 2 beautiful words: hello, beautiful. Retrain the eye. Thank you.
Thank you, Tasha. And
Thank
hello,
you.
beautiful.
Hello, beautiful. How are you?
She said that to me when I walked in. I was so happy. It made me so happy. But I know you say that authentically to everyone you see.
Not just everyone I see, but yes.
Well, you know, we've got a lot of great questions from the audience, and I think the one that stood out to me is, how can we change the language of adults who are at the forefront of change in Indianapolis to make them communicate more openly?
Very good. I think one of the things that happens with adults are they are afraid more often. They're afraid of how it may be, if this is going to be politically correct. The beautiful thing about working with students and children is that sometimes they don't care or don't even know what's politically correct, so they say exactly what it is that they see and feel right off the cuff. Adults are so much more meticulously manicured, and so we hold back what is true most times just because we don't want to offend. This may be a connect or a contact that we need later on, and we want to make sure that this is possible. And then we have these beautiful code words, right, that we use that will tell other people about who we are when we are forthcoming like that. We'll say things like passionate, or things that we stay away from. The beautiful thing about language itself is that written and or spoken, it needs to occur in order for change to happen. And so you have to ask yourself as an adult or as the person that you are speaking to answer the question, is whether or not the cause itself is worth the delay or the dilemma, right? So for me, you would look for it in that way. Should I say what it is that I have to say? Is it going to help the cause? You have to look at it with the end game in mind. My job is to make sure that the cause itself is the one that's getting answered and attested to. So that's the way that I would look at it.
That's a great way. And you know, I think the other question that is really sticking out, all of these are amazing. We're going to have to download later. But how do you take what you do in a classroom of 26, if you're sitting in the seats out here, and make change happen?
Well, I think, like I said before, the one thing that I did was looked at myself critically. I got that from an Audre Lorde essay. When you have to think it and look at things critically and with an urgent clarity. Sometimes we go into things without being urgent, and I think that's important. Not only that, but without being clear and honest to ourselves first. So even going into a business or a classroom, you have to look at what the problems are, what the strengths are, and then what you want to do. And so each classroom is different, but those strategies that I gave you would work anywhere.
That's great.
Yeah.
And last question, we just got a few seconds left, and this is hard, but how do you want education to be redefined for our city?
That's
not a few second answer.
It's really not. And that's maybe even an evolving answer. Right now, we are right there on the forefront of what's happening with 1321, the bill that's coming up next week that we probably need to vote on. And I think that's something that we need to maybe have a large spectrum of people who can talk about this in more detail. Right, initially, it would be great if we as adults took a deep dive into what the kids think that they needed, right? If we looked at this from another angle, We think that we have all the answers all the time. And the one thing that helped me manage and control that classroom that I walked in 3 months, with 3 months left at the end of the school year, is that I listened to them first. That I heard what their needs were first. Yeah. And then I tailored the education from that angle and got those results in 3 months. And so sometimes we need to have that conversation from that standpoint.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much for having me.
All right. Friends, we're going to take a quick break because our projector is back now. So I would love if you all just communicate amongst yourselves. I know, you know, Miss Jones will be around for a little bit. Yep, so she'll be available to talk one-on-one on the break, I bet. Thank you. All right.